The content of this program is provided for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not to be considered as advice, referral, or recommendations. Any use of the information provided is at the sole discretion of the listener. The presenters and this radio station expressly disclaims liability for errors and omissions in the contents of the presented resources and information already available to the general public. The presenters and this radio station do not have any affiliations to the agencies presented. Détail présenté sous programme ça, c'est pour éducation et information seulement. On ne pas doit considérer comme conseil référal ou soit recommandation. N'importe utilisation information qui base, c'est sous cette discussion mon cap côté. Présentateur yo ak station radio pas aucune responsabilité pour la commission pour ressources yo présenter ak information qui déjà disponible dans le public en général. Présentateur yo ak station radio pas aucune affiliation avec agence qui présenté.
This is WLGG 88.1 FM, Asbury Park. Raising a family in these times is challenging, with everything being so exposed and accessible through social media and the influence that come along with it. How do we find the balance? Does your child feel confined and has no outlet?
Sasha, meet me in the bathroom so we can take our Instagram pics, because you know once I get home they won't let me out.
Would your child come to you when they need help?
Mom, I'm in trouble and I don't know what to do.
Do you know the signs when your child is crying out for help?
Nicholson, you don't listen. The school has called me and now I have to attend another school meeting. This time you lose your video games for 2 months.
Do you and your family need access to resources?
I lost my job. How will we get our bills paid?
Does your family have expectations and boundaries for mutual respect and understanding?
I am the man of the house, but my family does not respect me.
Finally, a show where families can feel supported and get resources for guidance during these troubled times. Presented to you by Good News Community Action. Family Matters, a radio show, aired every Saturday afternoon from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. A new segment discussing all things and situations relating to families. Family Matters Discussions, a radio show for everyone to listen together.
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Family Matters on Good News Radio. This is a show being presented to you by Good News Community Action every Saturday from 4 to 5, repeated again on Sundays from 3 to 4. I'm your host, Elna. Our co-host, Monty, again, is not here with us, so we're kind of bummed about that, but we know that he has to do what he has to do, and hopefully, prayerfully, he will be back with us someday. But I do have someone here with me, a young man by the name of Jeremiah, who's going to help and bring some good content to this program that we're going to be discussing, our subject matter, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But let me greet our listeners in Creole. Bonsoir tout le monde. Bienvenue dans l'émission Affaires Famille. Moi c'est Elna. Moi besoin faire connaître que le programme ça présenté pour vous de Good News Community Action. Ça c'est notre propre organisation de radio Bonne Nouvelle. Moi content ensemble avec nous aujourd'hui. Nous sous l'air chaque samedi 4h pour 5h, répété encore dimanche 3h pour 4h. Moi co-animateur moi Manti, il pas ensemble avec nous aujourd'hui, mais bientôt, il sera ensemble avec nous si bon Dieu veut. OK, so aujourd'hui c'est troisième samedi, so nous allons partager sujet. Nous allons discuter histoire mon noir en Amérique et puis dans gens mon noir qu'on voter dans élection parce que nous avons une élection qui peut arriver dans le mois de novembre, dans le commencement du mois de novembre. Aujourd'hui c'est troisième samedi. Nous te disons que horaire que nous mettons pour programme c'est chaque troisième samedi nous discuter yon bagay nan histoire africain, ça pas veut dire africain américain seulement mais africain tout côté tout monde noir. Aujourd'hui on a discuté qui gens que monde noir voter dans élection américaine et puis Jeremiah ensemble avec nous il va aider nous ensemble avec discussion ça. All right, so we are going to be discussing voting rights and the voting patterns of Black and brown people in America today. But before we do, I just want to remind you of the ways to listen. If you are on the website, you can go to goodnewsradiotv.com. If you're on Facebook, you can go to WIGG Good News Radio. Via cell phone, if you want to dial or any landline, you can dial 518-906-1596. And if you're listening on Facebook, we encourage you to leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up, a like, or continue to follow us. And we also would like for you guys to donate to the radio because the radio, like we always say, is listener supported. So we ask you to go to WIGG Good News Radio to donate your money to the radio station so that it can continue to thrive and prosper because we are committed to providing you with content that's informational and very important for your daily living, community living, so that we can build together a stronger community of listeners and also to help you with situations, providing you information that will help you and your families. So we always leave the line open for anyone who wants to call in to join in the discussion that we're going to be having. So if you want to do that today, the phone number is 732-775-0220 or 732-775-0225. We would really appreciate it if you guys would call in, give a comment, or just join in if you have something that you'd like to share with us regarding our subject matter. We would appreciate that. You don't have to give your name when you call in. It's all completely anonymous. So don't be shy and give us a call. Okay, so nous besoin de nous qui gens qui nous attendent programme là si qui nous sur internet là nous aller dans goodnewsradiotv.com ou bien si qui nous remet aller sur Facebook nous aller dans WYGG Good News Radio. Si que nous voulons relayer un numéro de téléphone pour nous attendre émission c'est 518 906 1596. Et puis nous besoin si que n'a écouté nous sur Facebook ou nous besoin pour mettre un petit note en bas pour pas nous un petit conseil, pas nous un petit comment pour dire nous qui j'en tout bagaille et puis si que nous gain l'autre idée tout nous ca partager ça ensemble avec nous. Si que n'a écouté nous besoin participer dans discussion nous ca le numéro de téléphone 775 0220 775 0225. Oh on a oublié dire non pour nous si que nous parce que nous besoin faire nous connaître que radio les supporter de mon cap tande émission yo chaque jour dans radio bonne nouvelle si que nous remet yo nous besoin tendre plus de émissions ça yo nous besoin pour nous donner supporter radio voyer comme nous monter yo gagner cash app ou bien ou ka voyer comme l'argent que nous continuer voyer dans chaque mois. All right, so today we're going to discuss so I just want to say that we are going to mostly be speaking English today, okay, due to the content what we're providing, presenting today, and our guest speaker, who mostly speaks English. So
I can speak that too.
You could speak Creole a little bit?
I can't. I'm sorry.
You could say bonsoir.
Bonsoir, y'all.
So today we're going to talk about party line voting in America. So Election Day is coming up in November, and as citizens of the United States, it is our responsibility to do our civic duty and vote in the elections, not just the general election, but all the elections. You know that there's like a lot of elections that takes place throughout the years?
Yeah, I know that. I know
Yeah,
that.
you know that?
Yeah.
Okay. Name some of them. Some elections that take place are
You got, like for the governors and
yeah,
for the
governor.
mayors.
Uh-huh.
You also got for like for
School committees,
schools,
township
like
committees, school
business
board,
presidents and whatnot.
right?
Yeah.
Freeholders,
Yeah.
right? All those types of elections are taking place. And I'm not sure if you guys can hear that. Asbury Park is very busy this afternoon. There's some sort of festival going on. And so if you're hearing like sirens, that's outside. That's not us. Everything is okay in the studio with us. So we wanted to talk about elections and all the different types of elections that takes place, right? Because we want to encourage our people to vote, because when you vote, that means you are giving voice to the situations in your life. You're giving voice to your community, and you're giving voice to the nation at whole, right? So there were a lot of people back in the day, because believe it or not, there was a time when a lot of us were not allowed to vote. And we're going to get to that.
That's true.
So there were a lot of people that fought hard. They were ridiculed, they were assaulted, they were discriminated against, right? And some of them even lost their lives. They were denied, even after it was constitutionally given to them to be able to vote. People still try to find ways to prevent them from being able to vote and deny them the right to vote. So if it's so important, being that people gave up their lives for it. So why are we taking it for granted today? Why do election day comes around and it's not even a thing that people think about? Some people think of it as, oh, it's a day off from work, because some people get off on election day. No, it's not just a day off. It's not a day for you to sleep in. The polls are open, and they're open early. So it doesn't take a long time to vote. You just go in and do what you got to do and get out. And then you have the rest of the day ahead of you. Some people have to work during election day, and they vote like during their lunchtime or on their breaks, if the voting poll is close by where they are. So there's been a debate, right? There's been a debate about how Black and brown people vote, historically in these elections, in all types of elections. And because the vast majority of Black people vote for the Democratic Party, some are concerned that the Democratic leaders have taken the Black vote for granted, because they assume that Black people will always vote for them, because that's what we've shown them, that we're going to support the Democratic line. But why is that? Do we know why that's happening? Why do they think just because I'm Black, I'm going to vote Democratic?
Well, I think during these days, right, the media has portrayed the Democratic Party as I guess, open-minded and more, towards the Black community, when in reality, they really, once they get, to position, they really don't do anything for us, which is the truth, honestly.
Okay. Oh, wow. You just you're going headstrong right into it.
Yeah.
But we're gonna talk about some of that stuff later. You should write that down so you can expound on that a little bit more. So why do Black and brown people vote Democratic when it's the reverse for the Republican Party? Why is that? When you go to vote, how do you choose which candidate you will vote for? How do you decide who am I going to vote for? Because it's not just one person. That's why it's a vote. Because if it was just one person on the ballot, you wouldn't need to vote. They would just declare themselves, the winner, right? Because it's a competition. It's a competition, and you have to choose between the people that's on the ballot. Okay. Yeah. So how do you vote? Do you do your research? Do you know who you're gonna vote for based on their ideals or their views? and what they believe, what they stand for, they line up with what you believe and stand for and what you want to see done in your community? Or do you just go there and you vote because, oh, I didn't do my research, I don't know who these people are, so I'm just gonna vote Democratic because that's what my parents did, right? Or that's what their parents did. You know, do you choose based on whose names you recognize because maybe that person sent you a flyer to your house? Is that why you vote Democratic? Or is it because you saw their names in the community, like, you know, how they put their signs up in the community, in the neighborhood? How do you choose which party or which candidate you're going to vote for? So today we are hoping to light up this debate of party line vote. We will discuss history of voting rights in America, statistics on how Black and Brown Americans vote in America, and what does it mean to vote your conscience. And to discuss this, Jeremiah, whom I consider to be a civil rights advocate for civil rights, right? Is going to be helping us with that discussion. But before we continue on with that, you know, I always have resources for you guys. So yeah, let's get to it. So I want to tell you about a job fair that's going to happen through the Monmouth County Division of Workforce Development. Okay, so there's going to be a fall job fair, which is going to take place on Thursday, September 28th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. There's early access for people with disabilities and also for veterans. Okay, and that's going to take place at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. for the early access. Okay, so it's going to be in person at the Brookdale Community College Collins Arena, which is parking lot number 7. Brookdale Community College, for those of you who may not be aware, the address is 765 Newman Springs Road, Lincroft, New Jersey, 07738. So again, it's the fall job fair. They do one in the spring and they do one in the fall. So just keep in mind, if you're looking for a job, they have so many different companies and agencies out there, from municipal all the way up to state level, and everybody in between, who's going to be out there. They're going to have their tables set up, and they're going to some of them even do interviews on the spot. So if you're looking for a job, that's a one-stop shop for your job. Just go to the job fair, which is going to be on Thursday, September 28th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then Monmouth Crossing is also hiring. They're hiring for cook service, dishwashers, and food service workers. If you're interested in working there, they're located at 560 Iron Bridge Road in Freehold. And the date for their hiring event is September 20th, which is not too far, which is next week, actually. So if anybody's looking for a job, there you have it. Last week I announced some things that was happening in the community of Asbury Park. If you missed it, I encourage you to go back and listen to the show. You can go on Facebook. I talked about a lot of things that was happening in Asbury Park, like they're having their community day on it was today, actually. It's over. And they're also having their vegetable giveaway. This is all the way through the month of October. You can go every Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. There's another open house job fair that's happening. This one is going to be Saturday, September 23rd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's going to be at 250 Center Street in Freehold. So you guys are welcome to go to that. They are actually looking for CDL drivers, Class B, because they have positions in bridge maintenance, repair, highway maintenance, and traffic safety engineer, and also transportation for the omnibus operators. And if you're in the town of Neptune and you're looking for a job, you can go to their workforce career development center, which is located at 60. I'm sorry, one second. 1 second, I have to make sure that I plug this in. Okay, they're looking at 60 North Taylor Avenue in Neptune, and their phone number is 732-683-8850. If you have any questions, you can call them and dial extension 6011. Okay, so we always give information for the families and for kids. I want to talk to you about real quick before we get to the voting discussion about back to school nights, which is happening for Neptune Township. It's different days next week. Actually, the middle school had theirs already on Thursday. The high school is going to be Monday. Poseidon is going to be Monday. Green Grove is going to be on. Green Grove already had theirs. Summerfield is going to be the 19th. Midtown is the 21st. Shark River is the 13th. And Gables is the 20th. So Asbury Park is going to be the 25th, 26th, 27th. I brought this to your attention because we like to go to back to school nights, because when you go to back to school nights, that's a time when you get to learn, you get to meet the teachers. First of all, you get to meet the school administrators, and you get to learn what your child's going to be doing for the year, right? And the kids have already been in school for, I think, 2 weeks now. So far, the teachers will tell you based on if they did some sort of pre-test or the work that they've already been doing, where your child stands and what they expect from them. They're going to give you the rules of their classroom, and they're going to discuss their curriculum and everything, so you get to know what's going to be happening for the school year, and you're informed. The other thing that they pay attention to: who is showing up to back to school night, who is showing up for your child. They pay attention to that, because if you have a child, they expect to see the parent or the guardian, whoever that may be. If it's a mother, if it's a father, if it's a grandparent or an auntie, they want to see that someone is showing up for their child. So I want to encourage you, my people, families of Good News Radio and this program, to show up for your children back to school, so you can let the school administrators know that when they see this child, there's a whole community of people lining up behind that child, and they need to treat that child with the respect that the child deserves. And likewise, that child is going to be taught at home to respect the school administrators, and that when they go to school, they're going to school for an education. It's not a social club. It's not a place where they should engage in activities that hurt or harm other children. So we encourage you guys to show up, so that the administrators can put a face to the name, which is your name that shows up on all the documents and everything. You're the one signing the form, so they need to know that you exist and that you're there and you are supporting your children. So please show up to back to school night, and when they have parent teacher conferences, show up for that. When there's a phone call, return the phone call. When there's an email, return the email. Whatever it is, you need to be present. You need to let them know that you are actively engaged in your child's education. Okay, so that's all I had to say about that, Jeremiah. Jeremiah, you ready to engage in our discussion?
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about the Black vote and how historically Black people have been voting for Democratic, but that's not how it used to be, right? We're going to get to that in a minute. So we're going to talk about Black Americans and the vote. The struggle over voting rights in the United States dated all the way back to the founding of the nation, right?
Yes.
The original U.S. Constitution did not define voting rights for citizens until 1870. Only white men were allowed to vote. Is that correct? Right? So that means women weren't allowed to vote. Definitely Black people were not allowed to vote, or any other type of people that was in the country. Even the natives, Native Americans. Who actually the country belonged to, right? Because they were the natives. They weren't even allowed to vote, right? So 2 constitutional amendments changed which is the 15th Amendment, which was ratified in 1870, extending the voting rights to all men of all races, right? However, this amendment was not enough because African Americans were still denied the right to vote by state constitutions and laws because they put up poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clause, and outright intimidated these people when they showed up to vote. The 24th Amendment was the second one that changed, and this was ratified in 1964. And it partly addressed this injustice by prohibiting the use of poll taxes in federal elections. In addition to these constitutional amendments, the Voting Rights of 1965 secured voting rights for the adult citizens in all races and genders in the form of federal laws, and enforced the amendments. Right? So this country was newly formed, and already it was like plagued with all these, with this ugliness, right? From the beginning, it started very ugly, right? And as the years went on, we have seen a lot of progress made. Would you agree?
Yes.
There's been a lot of progress that was made.
Sure.
But still, it continues to be ugly, right? So from the time when the first group of people, the Pilgrims, settled in America in the 1620s, you know, a lot of them passed away because they couldn't get used to the harsh weather or the different types of foods and stuff like that. The animals, it was a completely different environment. They couldn't support it. So a lot of them passed away. But up until the 1620, all the way to 1867, the Voting Rights Act has been historic in the civil rights, which was meant to ensure that the right to vote is not denied on account of race or color. So in 1866, the Civil Rights Act granted citizenship, but not the right to vote, to all native-born Americans. So they owned this country, right? They were the natives of this country when the Pilgrims settled in 1620, and it wasn't until 1866 that they were extended the right to vote. Isn't that interesting? And in 1869, Congress passed the 15th Amendment, giving African American men the right to vote. So in 1869, African American men were given the right to vote, not women, African American men. So in 1896, Louisiana, which is a state, passed the grandfather clause to keep former slaves and their descendants from voting. As a result of registered black voters dropped from 44% to 4%. They reduced the number of registered black voters from 44% to 4%.
Wow.
Because of their grandfather clause. And what did this grandfather clause say? The grandfather clause said, basically, if you were a former slave, or you were a descendant of a slave, which is everybody.
Right.
That's all the black people, right?
You need some white people too.
Yeah, because there were some white slaves as well. So you couldn't vote. And then following in their footsteps was the state of Mississippi, South Carolina, Alabama, Virginia, and Louisiana. They passed their own grandfather clauses. So by the 1940s, only 3% of eligible African Americans in the South were registered to vote because of Jim Crow laws that put things like the literacy tests and the poll taxes were meant to keep African Americans from voting. Do you want to know what that looked like? Those literacy tests. This is what they did. So they would have, if someone were to come to vote, like if you're a black person or a former slave, you came to vote, they would have you complete a 10-minute assessment test. They would, the types of the questions that would be on there that they would have you do is draw a line around the number of letter of this sentence, or draw a line under the last word of this line. Cross out the longest word of this line, or draw a line around the shortest word of this line. Circle the first letter of the alphabet in this line, and in the space below, draw 3 circles, one inside the other. These are you have to understand, not a lot of people knew how to read back then. Right, so they were, it was like a catch-22. You wanted to vote, but if you showed up to vote, they would put you to through this rigorous thing that you probably wouldn't be able to do because you don't know how to read. And so that intimidated a lot of people and they didn't show up. So why was this necessary if you were only required to check off a candidate of your choice? It was an intimidation tactic.
Right.
Those who did not know how to read were intimidated and they didn't bother showing up to vote. So these are the kinds of things that they do. But nowadays they're using different types of tactics. I think it was back in 2016 during that election they wanted you to show up with your
ID.
driver's license,
Yes,
with your
with
ID,
the voter ID
right?
laws.
But being someone that sometimes work the polls, they're not allowed to ask you for your ID.
So,
It's actually against the law for them to ask you for your ID when you're voting.
so what was the thing with that voter ID law, though?
Because a lot of people didn't have IDs. They didn't have driver's license. The ID that most people use is, because they were targeting undocumented people.
Yes, I
Right?
know.
And then also
Okay, I
too,
get it now.
they were claiming that there are dead people voting. There's a lot of weird stuff that they were putting out there. But I just want everyone to know, like, there was a lot that went on back in the day for us to get to this point where we are able to vote. And so when there is an election going on, we want everyone to participate. We want everyone to show up at the polls and vote. Okay, so we want you to register to vote. And I do believe you have until the 21st, I don't have the date exactly, for you to register to vote. I think it's September 25th for you to vote in a November election. So we encourage everyone. That's a short few days away. So if you're not registered to vote, go and get registered to vote. So Black Americans, let me start with this. The number of Black eligible voters in the United States has grown at a modest pace in recent years, and it was projected to reach 32.7 million last year in November. So at the same time, Black eligible voters stand out for their relatively high voter turnouts. So in 2018, 51% of Black people showed up at the polls to vote, which was a really high turnout, right? So Black Americans are projected to account for 13.6% of all the eligible votes in the U.S. in November. Okay, this is according to the Pew Research Center projections. So this represents little changes since the last midterm election in 2018, when they accounted for 13.7%. So the percentage of eligible voters who are Black has changed a little in the past decade. So how do we fix this? So we want people to register to vote. We want you to register to vote. Then we want you to know before you vote.
Yes.
Okay? And then we want you to vote. All right? So how do you go about choosing the right candidate? How
Well,
do you go about doing that?
I am only 15 years old, but I think you should really just research your candidate and see the standpoints of where it's from. I don't align myself with being a Republican or a Democrat. I really would. So I'm a Christian, so
That's right.
so I would align.
You're gonna write Jesus.
Yeah,
And-
I would if I could, right? But honestly, if I feel with what a candidate aligns himself with and what he believes in, right, aligns with my Bible, like to the T, then he has my vote. But if not, and I'm gonna say this, if his what he believes for is like things I can't agree with, like just one, I'm not gonna vote for him. So
So everything has to add up. It has
I
to
would
match.
think yes, because I don't want anything to come against my Bible, or God,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I understand. But some will make the argument, like politicians, they say whatever you want them to say, or they think you want to
Yes,
hear,
that's
so they can
exactly-
get your vote. And once they get in office, they just do whatever they want.
Yeah, that's
or they do the things that their supporters, their lobbyists, the people that gave them the money,
right.
like the corporations, right? What do you say about that?
I think that is completely right, and I think that's what Democrats do, and that's what Republicans do. I think that's why I'm saying you shouldn't blindly vote to one side just because they're Democrat or not, because you have to truly look, figure it out. You have to truly look and figure it out. You have to see if they're humble, what their past life experiences have been. They can't just be some random guy. I'm not saying like there's no humble, rich people, but you know what I'm saying? Like if you're like rich or none, I feel like you're gonna be selfish. Like you have a rich background, right? And you've never worked a day in your life. I feel like you can't
relate. You're unrelatable.
Exactly, you're unrelatable to the people, because this is what this is about. The leader is not to just show himself, but even in the Bible, the leader is to show the people. It'd be a representative of the people and not themselves. So I think that you really have to try and get to know this person as much as possible to see if they are, a leader or they're worthy of the position they're trying to acquire.
Yeah, that's very well said. And just for the sheer fact that they seem to think, oh, I don't have to work for your vote because, you're a certain race or color. You're automatically going to vote for me. They don't even try.
That's what Biden said.
Yeah, they don't even try.
Right.
Like they just automatically think, okay, well, this group right here is going to vote for me because this is how they voted all these years. So right. I don't even need to show up to their community events. I don't even need to.
That's another thing. Communities, right? Blindly voting, but the people you blindly vote for won't even show up. They don't do anything for your communities.
Right.
A leader's supposed to be down there getting their hands dirty, doing stuff for you.
Doing the good stuff. Getting down and dirty, doing the good stuff.
Right.
Not the other way around.
Not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're spot on. Oh my goodness, you're such an intelligent young man.
Thank you so much.
I mean, I'm not biased in saying that. So you can judge candidates in two ways to be able to make your decisions. The positions they take on issues that are important to you, to your family, your communities, right? Even your state. Because what they decide will affect your life. It will affect your life all the way down to your baby when your baby is born. Right. So, yeah, you better pay attention to what they're saying and what they're saying about the different issues, right? And then number 2, the leadership qualities and experience that they bring to the office, or they say they will bring to the office. So you're going to check up their resume, make sure what they're saying lines up to what they've done in the past, right? And you want to go to vote411.org. Vote411.org and learn about the candidates on your ballot. Find out which candidates are running in your area. Yes, they sent their postcards. That's not enough. There's no information on that postcard. It's just their picture. It's their name and their picture, and that they're, which party they're affiliated with, and when you should show up to vote. That's what's on that ballot, on the postcard. That doesn't tell you anything about what they stand for. So you need to go do your own research, right? So gather materials about the candidate, research and collect information about them, go on their websites, listen to their speeches, read their resumes, find out what they've done in your community, like Jeremiah was saying, right? And number 5, learn about the candidate's leadership abilities. Look at their backgrounds and their experience. How prepared are they for the job? Like, look at our last president that we had, right? Who would say that he was experienced and was prepared for that job? Our last president? Not the one we have now, the one before, right? The one who's running again.
I would say, though, that I think he was a people person, though. Because I think he definitely went off script. And he said, I'm not saying he was fully right. I don't agree with everything he did, but Donald Trump we're speaking of. But I do think he was for his people. I can't say that for...
Who his people are?
Who his people are? Yeah. I don't think... Because because you can even see online these these people that run our country, the cards that they're speaking on, and they're even Joe Biden, a former vice president, he doesn't even seem well equipped to do this job. I guess he can't even form sentences straight.
Well, he's elderly, so
Yes, and that's exactly. So I also think there should be an age limit.
Oh wow, you're
requirement,
really
'cause-
talking. You talk about something. I read something a few weeks ago that one of the senators, she gave up her, because she's like 90 years old. She gave up power of attorney or legal decision making to her child, which was, she's obviously an adult, because she's like 90 years old and she couldn't be able to do that. And yet this person is still holding office. Look at McConnell.
Right, yeah.
Like, I think he froze a couple
He
of times
did
on
freeze.
TV.
That's exactly what I was talking about. He did
Yeah.
freeze. Right.
Yeah.
So I think there should be because, all this pressure of running the country shouldn't be put on an old person. Now, honestly, don't think it is. I think they're just faces.
Yeah, they're just there, and
they're
other
just
people
there.
are making decisions.
Other people are making decisions.
I totally agree
Yeah.
with that. And because they have name recognition,
Right.
and they did things in the past, and so and who they support, who their lobbyists are, so they hold those positions because they can get the votes, they can raise the money.
And another thing I think is, I don't think that this Democratic and Republican Party thing, the conservatives, the liberals, right? I think this is just a tactic, right? To divide people, because especially by the media, right? And these news, these biased news shows, right?
Radio, not just radio, but yes, there's a lot of biased
Yes,
radio
and
stations. But like the TVs, like Fox
right.
News and
Right.
and
CNN, right.
Okay.
I think it divides the people of America.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what it should be. Because I guess everybody's going to think they're right at the end of the day. The truth is in the eyes of the beholder, I guess. But
Yeah.
honestly,
I totally agree with that.
I don't really agree. That's why I just think everybody should be a Christian, though, because you align with the truth. The truth is always going to be there. It's not supposed to be up to man. It's not supposed to be up to man to decide what's right and wrong. And that's why when I vote, I'm gonna vote for a person that I think aligns with my beliefs. Right. And I also think that America, even though you hear God and the national anthem and the things written down, right, the Constitution, right? I don't think America has ever been with the Lord. I think maybe there's been like a time, right, that where families were under the same household, the father was there, right, and they all did their roles, right? The children were respectful, but that's definitely not that anymore. The leaders aren't for God anymore, as you can see. None of the people here aren't, and I think that America should be called to repent, because this, honestly, it's kind of disgusting how America's living. Before, it was far right, and it was doing evil things, right, like slavery, right, and then now it's just too, I would say,
liberal.
Yes, liberal and progressive, and it looks like the days of Babylon. Yes, the days of Babylon. And that's just another thing, because Babylon was not just, a city or a nation, right? Babylon has been through like all of humanity, because every time in the Bible where a nation falls, right? It is just exactly how Babylon was. So I think that's what's going on now. But yeah,
Well, Jeremiah, you know, I was reading the book of Revelations a few months ago, and America is compared to Babylon in the Revelation.
right.
Yeah. So you're onto something. Keep up your studies, young man.
Thank you.
So in the steps on how to choose your candidates, we ask people in doing your own research, also seek the opinions of others in your communities who are affected by, you know, these different types of political leaderships. Learn about their endorsements, right? Who do they endorse and what companies endorse them? You know, what groups of people, what families, because there are some wealthy families that can endorse a candidate and have a lot of clout to go along with that endorsement. And then now the candidate has to do what that family says.
Right.
Look into the campaign contributions. These are public information. You know, these are things that are supposed to be reported to the IRS. So if it's public, you can do a search and find out. Okay, and review the information on your candidate report card. They have one, and compare them to other candidates when making your decisions. And ask yourself these questions: which candidate's views, like you're saying, on the issues do I agree with the most? And who ran the fairest campaign? Which candidate demonstrated the most knowledge on the issues? Which candidate has the leadership qualities I'm looking for in a candidate? And if the choice is clear, then you've made your decision, right? So we don't want you to just not vote because you don't know anything about them. We want you to do your, you know, your due diligence and find out who you're voting for. Don't just vote, you know, for the Democratic Party because that's how my father voted, or that's how my mom voted, or that's what they told me to do. No, you're supposed to have a mind of your own, make that mind work for you, and go to work finding out the information. Listen, no one has a crystal ball to know what will happen tomorrow, right? We can only go by trends or by experience to determine how something may go, or even then, it's still unknown. We just make an educated guess based on prior experience or behavior. The candidates, they're doing the same thing. They're studying patterns and trends amongst the voters. And based on how you voted in the past, they will decide whether to appeal to you for your vote or not. Or they may decide, I'm not going to waste my time campaigning for your vote based on your personal voting trends, you know, because we know that the community of Neptune has been, you know, Democratic voters, or Monmouth County has been Democratic voters. The state of New Jersey is a blue state. Did you know that? That's why they call it blue state. Blue is for Democrats.
Yeah, I know.
Red is for Republicans. Texas is a red state. Or was it a red state last time? I don't know.
I don't remember.
So basically, you have to do your homework. Do your homework. Get to know them. Get to know who they are. So let's talk a little bit about how this switch happened. Because believe it or not, back in the day, early on, when Black people were allowed to vote, voting rights was a thing, and people were allowed to just go and vote. A lot of Black people were voting Republican.
Yep. Since Abraham Lincoln.
But now there has since Abraham Lincoln, right? It was, they were voting Republican. They were the party of Lincoln, the party of the emancipation, right? Because it was under Abraham Lincoln that the Emancipation Proclamation happened, declaring that all Black people were free. Although that information didn't get out there for a long time, right? So it was the Republican Party that pushed not only Black votes, but Black politicians to happen, you know, for there to be Black politicians during the period known as the Reconstruction, right? But today it's the exact opposite. That migration of Black voters away from the GOP, which is the Republicans, that happened about 50 years ago. Black voters began supporting the Democratic Party in greater numbers almost a century ago, but the events of the 1964 marked a dramatic shift in voting patterns, which still exists today. So what happened? Do you know what happened?
Yeah, it's a good question. What happened?
So it was basically this guy, right? I'm gonna tell you the story. So there's this guy who did a study. His name is Vincent Hutchins. He's a political scientist who studied voter patterns in the University of Michigan. He says that the shift first happened from the Republican Party during the Great Depression, which was in the 1930s. This was when there was a lot of people weren't working. There weren't jobs. People were poor. They didn't have food to eat. The country was not doing well at all in the 1930s, right? So Franklin Roosevelt's second administration, which was led by the New Deal, made the Democrats a beacon for Black Americans deeply affected by the crushing poverty that was plaguing the country. So the data suggests that even as late as the 1960s, only about 2/3 of African Americans were identified with the Democratic Party. And now 2/3 is a pretty big number, right?
Right.
But when you compare it to today, that number hovers about 90%. So how did we go from 0 to 2/3 to 90%? That's almost 100%. That's blind loyalty.
Yes.
Really? So we can't have any other, I mean, it's not 100% of the people, but it's very close to it. So how is it that everybody is like almost voting, one way? Why is there not like, like in the Matrix, they had to choose to continue with the mundane
because it's bias, that's just, I guess, what they grew up with. I remember I was almost like that, I almost was a blind voter. But I mean, I guess it's just because your parents were Democrats, so I'm gonna be Democrat, or you just grew up hearing, this is the way things should be, or those guys are racist. Especially now today in this media, you're gonna
or the Democratic Party is for welfare. People who believe in welfare, who wants handouts.
Yes. That's another thing, right?
Yeah, or those people, like the kind of like language that's used, and the Republicans, they paint them as they don't want anyone else to do well but them. They want to keep the money to themselves and to within their families and within their groups of people.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it was like there was something that happened, right? During the revolution, which was Freedom Summer. This was about 50 years ago when hundreds of college students, most of them were Caucasian, they journeyed to Mississippi to help Black Mississippians become registered voters. The state's response to the integrated movement had been swift and violent. Less than a month before the GOP met for its national convention in San Francisco. So there were some organizers by the name of Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, who he was African American and he was Mississippi born, and Michael Schwerner. They were kidnapped on a dark back road in Neshoba County. The only hint that they had existed was the Ford station wagon that Schwerner was driving. It was charred, so they recognized that car as belonging to him. The media attention that followed the men's disappearance, it kind of turned the South upside down. Their bodies were found in early August, buried in, a shallow, like, dam-like area. So 2 weeks after they disappeared, which was days before the convention that was going to happen, Lyndon Johnson, which was a civil rights, he signed the Civil Rights Act. He was the president at the time, making discrimination in public venues illegal. So they weren't for the integration of, these people who were trying to, like get the Black people to have more of voting power and to integrate them into like changing the vote and stuff like that, and to think about what they're voting for. So this is what they did to them, and this was all part of the discrimination, the intimidation, and people who lost their lives trying to fight for equality, especially for voting rights. So there's so much that goes on. We encourage you guys to to think before you vote. Know before you vote. So right now, I'm going to tell you guys how you can register to vote. Oh, Jeremiah, by the way, you said you were 15 earlier, right?
Yeah.
Did you know that you can register to vote when you're 17?
Yes.
So Josiah, you can register to vote when you're 17, which is in November. But you're not able to vote until you're 18, though. But you can register to vote when you're 17 years old. Okay, so in order for you to vote, first of all, you have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to be registered to vote. Okay, you have to be 18 to vote. You have to be a resident of the county for at least 30 days before the election. You have to be a person not serving a sentence of incarceration as the result of the conviction of any indictable offense under the laws of this or any other state in the United States. These are the reasons why you would not be eligible to vote. If you're serving a sentence, you're incarcerated, okay, in the United States. So that's pretty much it. That's the only reason, okay? If you're a criminal, they don't allow you to vote, okay? That's the only reason. Other than that, everyone should be voting, right? So when should you register to vote? When you move. You should register when you move. Like even if you had registered and then you change towns, you should register with that town to vote, so they can have your signature in their town's voting book. Now everything's electronic, but they still have the signatures on there. When you change your name, okay, so if you get married, you change your name, you should re-register. When you change your party's political affiliation, so if you used to vote Democrat and now you're going to be voting Republican, you should re-register to vote. But I'm like you, Jeremiah. I'm kind of like, I'm going to be with those people, that's going to vote my conscience, like I'm not going to affiliate to any type of party, because I don't want you to think you're going to take my vote for granted just because I look a certain way, or I live in a certain community. You're going to think that I'm automatically going to vote for you. No, you got another thought coming. So I'm going to do my research and I'm going to vote for whoever, like you said, lines up with my views and what I want to see happen. And absolutely, I feel like religious beliefs are under attack, not just in America, but all over the world. So yeah, I'm going to be paying attention to your views on, my religious freedom, my right to own a Bible, to be able to read a Bible, to preach the word the way it is written, right? Because the word, we were talking to someone the other day, and we all came to the conclusion, yes, we do have preachers that reiterate and they bring out the word and everything, but the word's already written. The gospel has already been preached. It's written, it's there. Anyone who has understanding can just pick it up. You pray to God and ask God to reveal to you what he wants you to get out of it and what he's saying to you based on the word that's already, but it's already there. The message is already there. So yeah, so.
Hold on. If I could just remember what I was about to say.
Okay. We have 1 minute, but think about what you're going to say. Okay. So yeah, so if you change your signature, you should register the vote and everything. Okay, you remember?
So another thing is, like, Democratic parties are allowing, like, our schools to be, our children to be perverse, like teaching things that kids in elementary, right? The youngest level that you wouldn't want your kids to be taught, right? You don't want to sexualize your children, because your children are supposed to be innocent, but they're also trying to ban Bibles.
Yeah.
So what is that telling you? You're trying to ban moral things, but you're trying to perverse, and you're trying to pervert our children.
Exactly. Oh, that's a deep subject.
That should be.
We're probably gonna have to talk about that another day on a Children and Families Day, maybe, which is the first Saturday of the month. So we're gonna talk about that another time. But I just want to correct something that I said earlier. So the deadline to register to re-register to vote is not the 21st of this month. It's 21 days prior to Election Day. So Election Day is November 7th, right? And I did have information for you on where Election Day is going to be. So Election Day is November 7th from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. But there is early voting that is happening from Saturday, October 28th through Sunday, November 5th. And it's going to be Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Here in the Neptune Asbury Park area, our voting station for early voting is the Neptune Township Senior Center, which is located at 1607 Corliss Avenue in Neptune, New Jersey. Jeremiah, thank you so much for coming and for enlightening us with all your intelligence.
Yes.
I'm glad to know that education still works.
Yeah.
And I think most of the stuff that you know, it really wasn't taught at school. You taught yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So reading works, right? So
yes,
they did teach you how to read, right?
Yeah.
Or we taught you how to read. So I want to thank you for being here, and you're welcome to come anytime and share some of your knowledge. We really appreciate it. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening to us on Family Matters on Good News Radio. If you missed us today, you can hear us again on Sunday from 3 to 4 on WYGG 88.1. And again, if you're listening on Facebook, don't forget to leave a comment or like us as we build a community of listeners who are actively engaged in meaningful discussions to promote communication, education, empowerment, encouragement, and elevation of our families. Until next time, be well and stay safe, and have some wholesome family fun. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, this is Elna signing off, and
Jeremiah Montgomery.
All right, merci tout le monde. Passez bonne nuit et puis bonne semaine. Prochaine fois, samedi prochain, on va rencontrer encore. Merci beaucoup.
We all can agree that raising a family in these times is challenging, with everything being so exposed and accessible through social media and the influence that come along with it. How do we find the balance?
Does your child feel confined and has no outlet?
Sasha, meet me in the bathroom so we can take our Instagram pics, because you know once I get home they won't let me out.
Would your child come to you when they need help?
Mom, I'm in trouble and I don't know what to do.
Do you know the signs when your child is crying out for help?
Nicholson, you don't listen. The school has called me and now I have to attend another school meeting. This time you lose your video games for 2 months.
Do you and your family need access to resources?
I lost my job. How will we get our bills paid?
Does your family have expectations and boundaries for mutual respect and understanding?
I am the man of the house, but my family does not respect me.
Finally, a show where families can feel supported and get resources for guidance during these troubled times. Presented to you by Good News Community Action. Family Matters, a radio show, aired every Saturday afternoon from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. A new segment discussing all things and situations relating to families. Family Matters Discussions, a radio show for everyone to listen together.
This is WYGG 88.1 FM, Asbury Park.